Alexis, aka the Self Reader, and I'm here today to do my December wrap-up. I read 5 books in the month of December. One of them I really didn't like, and one of them was my favorite books of the year. So I read 5 books to round out my total for the year to 97 books. I'm really happy with that number. And again, like I said, I liked a good amount of what I read in December, so I'll just go ahead and get into it. The first book I'm going to mention was the last book I read in December in 2017. I actually finished it on December 31st. And that is Ignite Me by Taher Mafi, which is the 3rd book in the Shatter Me series. And I gave this 2 stars. I did not like this at all. To be honest with you guys, this was one of the worst and most unsatisfying conclusions I have ever read in a YA book, in a book in general. You know what, my main problem with this series as a whole, honestly, and with this book specifically, and I'll get into that, is that this book has a cool premise. It's about a girl who can't touch people. It features kids with superpowers. It's a dystopian, and it features like Juliet, our main character, going through massive amounts of self-discovery about herself as a person and a lot of character growth. And, you know, she deals with being an outcast in society and how that shapes her as a person. And then, you know, ultimately she becomes part of a resistance to overthrow, like, this government. And that's all great, and that is all stuff that I love. The problem is that all of that is overshadowed by the romance, both of them. This book, I'm not kidding you, this book is like just over 400 pages. It was like 402, 403 pages. Probably a good 70 or 80% of that is literally just the romance developing. And the like climax of the book takes place in the last 40 pages. And that doesn't bother me except for 2 reasons. One, there was literally basically no falling action and no denouement, no conclusion to this book. This book ends so abruptly, and like, no wonder she's writing a 4th book, because this book ended like somebody cut out half of the actual ending and just left you with what it was. And so like, I mean literally, like, it was just not a good ending. And then my other problem with that is that, so the climax starts to happen about 360 pages into the book. Nothing happened before then. The only thing that happened in the prior parts of that were the romance developing between Juliet and one of the love interests. And then there were moments of character growth for Juliet. But it's like, her character growth wasn't even like settling with me before I was thrust into the romance again. And so it's just so frustrating, because all of the parts of the book that I loved were just overshadowed by the romances, and that was really in all 3 books. It's an issue I have with the series, is that this series is a romance first and foremost. Know that when you get into it. And of course I continue to have problems with Taher Mafi's writing in this. It's so unnecessarily flowery, and there's so much metaphors in here that don't make any sense. They don't need to be there. The only reason I didn't give this 1 star, to be honest with how much I didn't like it, was that A, I think Juliet had some really strong character growth moments in this series. And the other one is that I really like a lot of the side characters, Kenji being the star of the show for me in this series. This is just such a disappointment. I wanted to love these books. I tried to love these books, but they were just such an unsatisfying disappointment. And part of that is, I've said this before, I didn't like either romance, I didn't like either love interest, I didn't want Juliet with either one of them. And the fact that this series spends so much time focusing on that, I just could not get past. The next book I read in the month of December, I actually did a buddy read with my friend Melanie. I'll link her blog down below, and that was 3 Sides of a Heart, which is a YA anthology all about love triangles. As with all anthologies, this was a mixed bag for me. Some of the stories I really loved, and some of the stories I really disliked. I will leave my Goodreads review linked down below. In that, I actually rated each story one by one. I'm not going to do it here. My favorite stories by far in this collection were the Tessa Gratton one, the Natalie C. Parker one, the Lamar Giles one, and the Bethany Hagen one. Those are the ones a month later that like I still am like, oh my god, I loved those stories. Those are the ones I all gave 5 stars to. So yeah, again, this was my first time buddy reading a book with somebody, and I had a really good time like reading them and being able to discuss them with Melanie. But yeah, overall, it was, you know, 50-50. Some of them I really liked, some of them I really didn't like, so what can I can't really say anything else. The next book I read I gave 4 stars to, and that was Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and this follows our main character whose brother has just been shot, and it basically takes place in the span of several minutes while the main character is in an elevator ride contemplating going and getting revenge on the man who killed his brother. And every floor of the elevator, somebody gets on the elevator who has a connection to him or his brother, and basically presents him with like what he's going to do and whether he really wants to do that. The entire story is written in verse, and I'm not one who typically likes verse, but I think writing in verse was honestly the best suited writing style to this book, because the book only takes place, like I said, in a span of a couple of minutes, as he's dropping off at each floor and a person is getting on. And so having it written in verse, it's really fast paced, and Jason Reynolds' writing style is really gritty, which I think really suits the topic that the book is discussing, obviously, which being our main character is on his way to murder somebody for murdering his brother. So I really liked this. Again, considering I don't really like books that are written in verse, I just thought it fit the story so well, and I really loved seeing each of the characters come onto the elevator and how they played into the story as a whole. I really liked. I really liked the discussion, and Jason Reynolds is known for his social commentary that he puts in his book, and this one was definitely no exception. The last 2 books I'm going to mention are from the same series, and they were my 2 favorite books I read in December, so it kind of works out that I'm going to talk about them together. But that being The House of Hades by Rick Riordan, which is the 4th book in the Heroes of Olympus series, and The Blood of Olympus, which is book 5, the final book in the Heroes of Olympus series. I did not think I was going to get through both of these, but I ended up starting The House of Hades, and it ended up being one of my favorite books that I read in 2017. It's definitely my favorite book in the Heroes of Olympus series. So I ended up reading this one, flying through it, loving it, getting really emotional about some of the content in this book, and then I knew I had to pick up The Blood of Olympus right away, especially because my favorite character in the series, my boy Nico D'Angelo, got his own perspective in The Blood of Olympus, and I was like, no way, I'm not reading that. But I also just loved, I think that these 2 are the strongest books in this series. The House of Hades takes on a like parallel story where it's following 2 concurrent storylines as they're kind of coming to a head and a specific event. I'm trying to leave out specifics because these are the 4th and 5th book in a series, but I loved that in The House of Hades. I loved seeing these 2 storylines alternating and kind of how they were interacting with each other and like how they were all leading to a point. I also just loved that we got to see a lot of character development starting in this book for several characters, my boy Nico being one of them, obviously. But I also love that we got to see so much from both Piper and Leo in these last 2 books. And it really starts in The House of Hades, where we get to see them kind of step up and become like bigger characters. And I really loved that. And then The Blood of Olympus, very similarly, also tells like a parallel story structure where it's following 2 concurrent storylines. And I really loved that in this book as well. I also loved the new POVs we got in The Blood of Olympus, one being Nico D'Angelo's and the other being a character called Reyna. And I really enjoyed both of their perspectives immensely. I would read an entire book just about either of them. And I just loved the character developments that we got to see in these last 2 books. I loved the plot. I gave The House of Hades 5 stars, and I gave The Blood of Olympus 4.5 stars. I didn't give it a 5 stars because I found the ending to be a little climactic, I will admit. But I absolutely loved both of these. The House of Hades being such a star for me. I really connected to this story, and I talked a little about this in my favorites video. There's a character in this book, in this series, that is revealed to be queer. I don't know what their specific identity is, But their storyline resonated with me so personally. I also just like got really emotional when I thought about what it must be like, because these are middle grade books and they're on the younger side of the young adult. And I can't imagine what it was like to pick up this book as someone from the target demographic and to read a character just like themselves, possibly for the first time ever, and how immensely powerful of a moment that can be. And like books like this, like how I felt about this book and how younger people must feel about this book, is why I think representation and diversity, when done well, is so important. And I acknowledge that the queer storyline in the story definitely could have been handled with a little bit more nuance had it been written by a queer author, but like it resonated with me so immensely because of the struggle this character goes through with kind of coming to terms with being queer. Was such a personal like experience for me reading this book, given my own personal experiences, and I loved it. That's all you need to know, is that I love it. And I just, oh my god, I loved it so much. So I read 2 books that I ended up loving for the year. One of my favorite books of all time I ended up reading in December, and I couldn't have asked for like a better way to end the year, except I could, because like technically I ended the year with Ignite Me, but whatever. I'm done with 2017. I'll just pretend it didn't happen. Alrighty guys, so those were all of the things I read in the month of December. I would absolutely love to know what was your favorite and least favorite book you read in December, or if you have any thoughts or opinions about any of these. I know Shatter Me is a very well-beloved series. It just was not the series for me, so sorry, I guess. If you like what I do, I upload videos on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye!